Hi there. You're watching Reddit Confessions. If you've ever thought your life couldn't flip upside down in under 5 seconds, let me be your cautionary tale. Let me take you into the exact moment everything shattered, but nobody raised their voice. She looked at me, adjusted the sleeves of her blazer, and said calmly, "I have a date tonight." Not even a blink, not even a tremble. Just that sentence, dropped like a coffee mug on a glass table, silent before the explosion. I should have asked, "With who?" Or "What do you mean?" Or something human. But I didn't. Something else came out of my mouth. Something that didn't feel like it belonged to me. I smiled, and I said, "So do I." Now, before you think this is going somewhere empowering, like I actually had someone lined up or some genius master plan, I didn't. I had nobody. I hadn't even touched another human being besides her in weeks. I barely hugged friends. I don't even get calls from spam numbers anymore. My most consistent social interaction outside of my job was with the guy who bags my groceries, and even he seems to be avoiding eye contact lately. But in that moment, my mouth betrayed me. Or maybe it saved me, because that's the moment she blinked. Her jaw didn't drop, but it shifted, like she suddenly didn't know the rules of the game she was playing anymore. She adjusted her earrings like she was stalling, like I had just pulled the rug from her, even though she's the one who lit the damn match. She left 5 minutes later, said nothing, just grabbed her keys, stepped into heels I hadn't seen before, and walked out like it was just another Tuesday. I heard the front door click shut, and I stood there, still in my socks, holding a bottle of carpet cleaner, wondering what part of me just died and what part of me was waking up. I didn't have a date, but I had time. And time, as it turns out, is dangerous when you've been gaslit into thinking your marriage is just in a rough patch. You start remembering things you weren't supposed to notice, like the night she came home with lipstick smudged, not on her lips, but on her collarbone, said it was her own. I leaned forward fast, she claimed. I believed her. Or how she changed her phone password, then changed her lock screen photo, then changed her entire routine, claiming a new gym trainer was killing her glutes. There were no glutes killed, only my dignity. I remembered all of it now, as I sat at the dining table, alone. The table she used to decorate for date nights in. The one she abandoned for Girls' Thursdays, which, let's be honest, had turned into ghosted Colby Fridays. So what did I do with my time? I made tea. I fed the cat. I sat on the couch and texted myself. Reminder. Next time she tells you something shocking, try blinking first. I didn't know where she went, but what I did know was this. She didn't expect me to smile. She didn't expect me to say anything at all. She expected me to break. She expected the sad puppy routine, the tears, the begging, maybe even a scene. But instead, I told a lie so convincing, I started to believe it. And that's when the universe threw a curveball at me, because later that night, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. A single message. No greeting. Just, "So what's her name?" I stared at that text like it was a loaded gun sitting on my lap, because I hadn't told anyone. Not a soul. So who the hell knew? When I say my heart stopped, I don't mean that poetically. I mean, I actually reached for my chest because the text felt like a punch from the inside out. So what's her name? Who the hell even knew what had just happened? I hadn't called anyone. I hadn't posted anything. I hadn't spoken out loud since she walked out. The only other living thing in the house was the cat. And unless Bubbles learned to use an iPhone behind my back, something wasn't adding up. I stared at the message like it was a riddle with too many layers. My thumb hovered over the reply button, and I typed, "Who is this?" Then I deleted it. I typed again, "Wrong number." Deleted that too. After a minute of pacing around the living room, I finally settled on, "Depends who's asking." 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Whoever it was had been waiting for me to reply. That's what sent the chill through me, because only people who already know the answer wait that fast. The reply came in seconds. "She's been at the Birchfield Hotel every Thursday. You weren't supposed to find out." The Birchfield. That name made my stomach turn. I knew the place. Everyone in our town did. It wasn't a bar or a restaurant. It wasn't even a fancy date spot. It was a place with tinted windows, discreet parking, and a front desk that didn't ask questions. You don't go to the Birchfield for dinner. You go there to make sure nobody recognizes the shoes outside the door. I dropped my phone. Literally. It hit the carpet and bounced once. I stared at it like it had betrayed me, even though it was just the messenger. The worst part wasn't that this stranger knew. The worst part was that I didn't know. For months, maybe a year, I'd been walking around in the shell of a marriage, putting my trust in a woman who was probably laughing behind my back while I folded our laundry and meal prepped her kale salads. And now some faceless number was dragging me into the middle of it. I picked up the phone again, hands shaking. My reflection in the black screen looked older, weaker, smaller. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was embarrassed. Like someone had let me speak with spinach in my teeth for a year and everyone knew but me. I texted back, "Why are you telling me this?" Another pause. Then, because she told him she was single. I read it 3 times, each time slower. She told him she was single. Not married. Not it's complicated. Not I need space. No, single. Do you know what that means when someone says that? It means you're not just being cheated on. It means you've been erased. She hadn't just found someone else. She'd deleted me. I wanted to scream, but the house was too quiet. Screaming would feel too real, like once the sound was out there, I couldn't pretend this was still a misunderstanding. So instead, I sat down on the kitchen floor, leaned my back against the fridge, and whispered, "I'm not even a husband anymore. I'm a detail she edits out." That's when something broke inside me. Not a loud break, but a quiet internal snap, like a paperclip finally giving up. And with that break came clarity. I stood up, wiped my face, and went to the closet. No, I didn't pack a bag. I wasn't running. Not yet. I just wanted to see what wasn't mine anymore. I ran my fingers along the sleeves of her coats, the ones I used to think she wore for me. One was gone. The same navy one she wore when she said she had her date. The same one she wore the night she looked me in the eye and told me to my face that she was going to meet another man. I grabbed her empty hanger. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened my laptop. I searched the Birchfield Hotel. I clicked on the guest reviews. I scrolled through the photos. I went further than I should have. I found tagged images on social media. A handful of them showed the same wallpaper, the same wine glasses, the same table lamp I remembered from a birthday stay we once shared. But one post stopped me cold. It was from an anonymous local gossip page. A photo of 2 people, faces blurred, but bodies too familiar. A woman with Sienna's haircut, Sienna's height, Sienna's shoes, and a man who looked younger, maybe late 20s. A comment beneath the photo, another married woman caught at Birchfield. Poor guy. My hands clenched. My teeth did too. Not from rage, yet, but from humiliation. That was me they were talking about. Poor guy. That nameless, faceless me. And the one thing I realized more than anything else, she didn't think I'd do anything. She didn't think I'd leave. She didn't think I'd matter. I didn't sleep that night. It's not that I didn't try. God knows I lay there for hours, eyes open, body still, pretending the ceiling fan above me had answers if I stared hard enough. But there was a ringing in my ears that wasn't physical. It was shame. It was fury in a whisper's disguise. I kept replaying that text in my head. She told him she was single. Those 6 words held more weight than anything I'd heard in years. They weren't just betrayal. They were deletion. Like I'd been removed from the narrative of my own life, and I wasn't even offered a footnote. At around 4:17 a.m., I gave up. I got out of bed, walked to the kitchen, and made toast. Not because I was hungry, but because I needed to hear something break that wasn't me. The pop of the toaster felt like the only honest sound in the house. Even the floorboards under my feet felt like they were holding secrets. Bubbles followed me, her tail curled like a question mark. She kept looking toward the door, like she was waiting for Sienna to come back. I wasn't. The part that scared me most? I didn't care if she did or didn't. That tiny flicker of indifference. That's when I realized I wasn't in love anymore. I was in something else. something darker, something that burned slower but deeper. I sat down at the kitchen table with my toast and opened my laptop again. I had no plan, but I knew I needed answers. More than I'd gotten from that mystery number. I scrolled through our shared Google Calendar. Something we hadn't updated in months, but she used to log everything there. Work meetings, brunches, doctor appointments, and then I saw something weird. Dr. H. Consult, 5:30 p.m. weekly. It was labeled under her personal calendar, recurring every Thursday evening for the last 7 months. Now, I know what you're thinking. Could be therapy, could be a chiropractor, could be something benign. Except Sienna hated doctors. Avoided them like the plague. Last time I suggested she get a flu shot, she said, "My immune system has better boundaries than you do." Looking back, I should have taken that personally. So I clicked on the location attached to the calendar event. It was the Birchfield Hotel. Not a doctor's office. Not even a pop-up clinic. Just the Birchfield. I didn't know what I was doing anymore. My hands were moving faster than my brain. I pulled up our phone bill. She'd made a mistake a few months ago and linked her number to my online dashboard when her card expired. I searched the number that texted me. No match. But then I looked at her outgoing calls. The number was there. Repeatedly. Thursday afternoons. Friday mornings. So not only did this person know about me, she knew them too. I stared at the screen until the names and numbers blurred. Then I did something I've never done in our marriage. I left the house without leaving a note. I drove. No destination. No music. Just asphalt and tension. About 30 minutes outside of town, there's a bluff that overlooks a frozen lake. We used to go there before we got married. Just to get away. I parked, killed the engine, and stepped out into the cold. The air hit me hard. Slapped my skin like it wanted me to wake up. I screamed. I screamed into the freezing air until my lungs burned. And it didn't fix anything. But it made me feel real again. I sat on the hood of my car and typed one more message to that number. "If you know so much, tell me his name." The reply came 10 minutes later. Just one word. Eli. Now that may not sound like much. Eli is a common name. Innocent. But I knew only one Eli. Eli Hammond. My coworker. My assistant. The guy I trained. The guy I covered for when he was sick. The guy I invited to our wedding. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the universe had finally gone full cliché. The affair wasn't some mysterious man from out of town. It was the one guy I never saw as a threat. The guy who came to our house last summer to borrow my circular saw and stayed for 3 hours drinking my beer and complimenting my patio lights. That Eli. I laughed until I cried. Then I cried until I shook. Then I shook until I felt still again. And in that stillness, I realized something else. If Sienna could smile at me, tell me she had a date and then go meet him, in our town at a hotel we'd once stayed in together, then I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I was just the fool who'd stopped asking questions. But I'd started now. And I wasn't stopping. The drive back from the lake was a blur. I couldn't tell you what streets I took or how I didn't crash. I just remember gripping the wheel so hard my fingers cramped. My mind ran in loops. Eli. Birchfield. Thursday nights. She told him she was single. My name never came up. I wasn't angry. Not in the traditional sense. It wasn't fire, it wasn't violence, it wasn't the movie version of betrayal. It was something colder, deeper, like I had been hollowed out and someone else was living in my skin now. I didn't go home. I didn't want to see our couch, our coffee mugs, her jacket still on the hook. I didn't want to walk into my life and feel like a guest. So instead, I drove to the one place I'd avoided ever since this began. The office. See, the irony here is that Eli technically works under me. He's newer, younger, good with people. Everyone likes him. One of those guys who laughs at all the right moments and somehow makes even your own stories sound better when he repeats them. It used to be charming. Now it made my stomach turn. I parked in the employee lot behind the building. It was late. Only a few lights were still on in the upper floors. But I knew Eli's habits. He stayed late sometimes. Said he got more done when the phone stopped ringing. I used to admire that. Now I knew better. I walked into the side entrance and took the stairs. Each step sounded like a countdown. When I reached our floor, I didn't knock. I pushed the door open like I belonged there, because I did. And there he was, alone in the bullpen. Hoodie, headphones, sipping something from a paper cup, completely unaware that the ground under his feet was about to split in two. He looked up. "Colby? Man, what are you?" I didn't wait. I asked calmly, "How long have you been sleeping with my wife?" The look on his face didn't just confirm it. It screamed it. The blood drained. His mouth opened, but his voice abandoned ship. He tried to form a sentence, but all I got was, Colby. I didn't. Listen, man, it wasn't. I cut him off. She told you she was single. That hit harder. His expression shifted from shock to guilt to something I didn't expect. Fear. He stood up slowly, palms out like I was holding a weapon. "Colby, I didn't know at first. I swear. She told me you were separated, that you were living apart, that you had moved on." I almost laughed. Do I look like I've moved on? He didn't answer, probably because I looked like hell. My hoodie was stained with God knows what from the night before. My eyes were probably swollen. I was shaking slightly from exhaustion, caffeine, and betrayal, and my voice, though calm, had that dead edge that made even me feel nervous. "I found out because someone texted me," I said. "Told me about the hotel, the Birchfield, told me your name." Eli's eyes widened. I didn't tell anyone." That stopped me. "V didn't tell anyone." "Then who did? Was it her?" I asked. "Is this some kind of twisted confession plan? Did she want me to know?" He shook his head, looking genuinely rattled now. No, Colby. She wouldn't do that. She's careful. She made me delete texts after every meetup. She used a second phone." "A second phone?" My knees almost gave out. I grabbed the edge of the cubicle to stay upright. She had a second phone. My wife, who once got overwhelmed by 2 streaming subscriptions, managed to juggle an entire secret communication system while living with me in the same house. "She said it was just physical," Eli added quietly, like that was supposed to comfort me. "She said you were more like a roommate." That broke something in me, not just because it was cruel, but because I believed her at one point. I'd started thinking of myself as a burden. I had blamed me for her distance, her coldness, her detachment. I thought maybe I wasn't doing enough. Maybe I wasn't interesting anymore, attractive enough, strong enough. I'd wondered if I was too sensitive, too soft, too emotional. But now I realized she wasn't distant because I failed. She was distant because she had already replaced me. I looked at Eli, this man I once trusted, and I didn't hit him. I didn't yell. I just stared at him until he lowered his eyes. And then I said something I didn't expect to come out of my mouth. "I hope she lies to you too." He blinked. "What?" "You deserve to find out the way I did. Half-conscious. Too late. From a stranger." I turned and walked away before he could say another word. And as I stepped into the elevator, the image of Sienna and Eli in a dimly lit hotel room burned into my brain. But what burned more was the feeling that I was still just a bystander in my own life. That had to change. By the time I made it back to the house, the sun was already beginning to rise. There was this gray-blue hue to the air, the kind that makes everything look like it's holding its breath. My driveway felt longer than usual, like the house itself didn't want me coming back. I sat in the car for a long time, engine off, eyes fixed on the front door, wondering if she was still inside, still asleep in the bed we used to share, or worse, already gone again. The last 24 hours had taken something from me I couldn't name yet. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was displacement, like I was floating somewhere above my life, watching some other poor guy live it for me. But I wasn't floating now. I was walking back into it. And the moment I stepped through that door, I felt something was off. The house was too clean. It wasn't usually a mess. But this was like a model home. Cushions aligned perfectly on the couch. Coffee table wiped. Her coat gone from the hook. The scent of lavender still lingering in the air. Not the real kind, but the kind that comes from an expensive diffuser she only used when guests were coming over. But the place was empty. Too empty. Not like she'd just stepped out, but like she'd vacuumed herself out of the space entirely. And then I saw it on the dining room table, right where we used to eat Chinese takeout and laugh over dumb reality TV shows, was a box. A plain brown box, sealed, sitting dead center on the wood. No note, no return label, just a box. I didn't want to touch it. I wanted to pretend it wasn't there, to convince myself that it was something mundane, something she ordered and forgot. But deep down I already knew it wasn't. This was her way of speaking without having to say a word. So I pulled out a chair, sat down, and stared at it like it might explode. Then I peeled the tape back slowly, like that somehow made it less dangerous. Inside was a folded sweater. My sweater, the one I wore the night we first kissed. Beneath it, a framed photo of us at the lake 2 years ago. Smiling, arms around each other, back when I still believed this was forever. And under that, a stack of envelopes, each one labeled in her handwriting. Read when you're calm. Read when you're ready. Read when I'm already gone. That last one sat on top of a folded legal document. I didn't even have to open it to know what it was. I'd seen enough movies to recognize divorce papers when they're gift-wrapped in silence. My hands were trembling. I opened the last envelope. Inside wasn't an apology. Not even close. It was a letter, but not the kind you hope for, the one where she explains everything and tells you it wasn't your fault. No, this one was a confession with a twist of cruelty. She wrote about how she'd outgrown me, how being with me felt like pressing snooze on the life she was supposed to have, how she didn't regret the affair, because for once she felt awake. She said I was always nice, always safe, but never alive. She said that by the time she told me she had a date, she had already moved her heart somewhere else months ago. She even wrote, "You smiling and saying, 'So do I,' was the first time in years you surprised me. And it made me realize you're not as broken as I thought. That's good. You'll need that strength." I folded the letter once, then again, until it couldn't be folded anymore and my fingers hurt. But there was more. At the bottom of the box was her second phone. No password. No lock. She wanted me to see. I should have closed the box. I should have walked away. But curiosity is its own form of self-harm. The messages were all there. Every Thursday check-in. Every emoji. Every "can't wait to see you." Every "he has no idea." Photos. Memes. Inside jokes. She even called him by a nickname she used to use with me, Mouse. I hadn't heard her call me that in years. Guess it found a new home. But one message stood out. It wasn't from her. It was from him. "Eli. He's going to figure it out eventually. You need to decide what happens when he does." And her reply from just 3 nights ago. "I already have. I'm leaving him before he finds out who I've really become." That line hit harder than any insult because it was the truth. She wasn't just cheating. She had transformed. The woman I fell in love with wasn't even hiding behind a mask anymore. She'd taken it off. And I didn't recognize what was underneath. I sat there for hours. Didn't move. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just stared at everything I thought I knew laid out in fragments on a dining table we once laughed at crumbs over. At some point, I noticed something else. There was one more envelope, tucked into the bottom seam of the box, barely visible. It was addressed differently. No "read when you're ready." This one simply said, "For Eli. Don't open." I stared at the envelope for at least 15 minutes without touching it. "For Eli. Don't open." Those 4 words held a weight I couldn't explain, as if even breathing too close to it would trigger something irreversible. It was handwritten, slightly smudged, like she scribbled it in a hurry, with more emotion than she showed me in the past year. Could have ignored it. I could have shoved it back into the box, sealed it up, and walked away with some shred of integrity. But after everything, after the lies, the second phone, the hotel rooms, the silent divorce papers she practically gift-wrapped, my sense of moral boundaries had cracked wide open. I'd been erased, replaced, and betrayed in silence. So I broke the last rule. I opened the envelope. There was no letter inside. Not in the traditional sense. Just a folded piece of notebook paper with three things: a street address, a time, and a single sentence underneath. Tell no one. Come alone. That's it. No explanation. No, I'm sorry. No, I'll explain everything. Just instructions like she was luring him into some secret operation. I checked the time, 7 p.m., that same day. The address? A small town about an hour away from us. I'd never heard her mention it. Never been there myself. A place called Minersville. It was barely past noon. I had almost 7 hours to decide if I wanted to become someone else entirely. Because let's be honest, this wasn't about healing anymore. This wasn't about saving a marriage. That box, that letter, that second phone. They weren't cries for help. They were a performance. A send-off. She wanted me to read those things, feel everything, and then sit down quietly in my ruined little life and let her vanish into her next one. And Eli? He wasn't a person to her. He was a passenger. A temporary ride out of the relationship she'd quietly decided to abandon long ago. But that envelope wasn't for me. And now I knew something he didn't. I didn't hesitate. I copied the address onto my phone, put the envelope back in the box, and shoved the whole thing under the bed. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but I knew I couldn't sit in that house another minute pretending the walls weren't screaming. So I left. The drive to Minersville was long, flat, and eerily quiet. I didn't play music, didn't make a phone call. My thoughts were loud enough. I went over every possibility. Was it a goodbye? A meetup? A trap? Was she planning to run away with him? Were they conning me together? It sounded insane. And yet, after the last few days, nothing felt too far off. Every time I thought I had reached the bottom of this betrayal, a new floor opened up beneath me. Minersville turned out to be nothing more than a few buildings, a diner, and one gas station with a flickering neon sign. The address led me down a cracked side road until I reached a house, small, almost abandoned looking, with chipped paint and overgrown grass. A red porch light glowed like an omen. It was the kind of house you pass every day and forget it ever existed. I parked 2 houses down. I waited. At 6:58 p.m., a black car pulled up. It was Eli. Of course it was. He stepped out of the car like he was auditioning for the role of guilty side character in a crime drama. Kept looking over his shoulder. Checked his phone. Walked up to the door. Knocked once. It opened before he could knock again. And then he disappeared inside. I waited 10 minutes, 15, then 20, and something told me, go. Don't barge in. Don't confront. Just look. So I stepped out of my car, crept around the back of the property, and found a side window with the blinds tilted just enough to see inside. What I saw was not what I expected. She wasn't crying. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't wearing the desperate expression of a woman torn between 2 lives. She was calm, in control, and in the middle of the room, between her and Eli, was a folder. They weren't kissing. They weren't fighting. They were signing things. At first I thought it was some kind of legal paperwork. A lease? A contract? But then I saw something that froze my spine. Passports. 2 of them. One hers. The other not Eli's. And then she pulled out an envelope from her purse, the real one meant for him. She handed it to him, and for the first time I saw Eli look truly terrified. He stood up, pushed the chair back too fast, said something I couldn't hear. She didn't flinch. She pointed toward the door. He looked like he was pleading. She didn't care. He left. Fast. I ducked. Didn't breathe until his car sped past mine and disappeared into the distance. I waited 5 more minutes before approaching the house. I had no plan, no script, just that dull throb of betrayal behind my ribs. I knocked once. The door opened. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look guilty. She just looked at me like she had been waiting. And then she said, "You opened it, didn't you?" I nodded. She stepped aside. "Then I guess we need to talk." She didn't invite me in like a wife greeting her husband. She didn't hug me, didn't cry, didn't apologize. She simply walked back into the house and left the door open behind her. I followed because how could I not? Every instinct in my body screamed this was a trap, that I shouldn't be here, that whatever version of Sienna I was about to face was no longer the woman I married. But I stepped through that doorway anyway, because after everything I had been through, I couldn't go back to being the man who never asked questions. And what waited inside wasn't an explanation. It was an unraveling. The place was dim. Not cozy dim. Unsettling, motel drapes drawn at noon kind of dim. She stood near the small table where the folder had been. It was gone now. She had cleared the space, like erasing the evidence of what had just taken place. Her hair was tied back, tight. No makeup. No tears. She looked exhausted, but sharp. Like someone who'd stopped pretending and wasn't interested in playing roles anymore. "I figured you might open it," she said calmly, motioning toward the now empty envelope I still had folded in my pocket. "I told myself I didn't care if you did. But I knew deep down you would. That's why I left it in the box." I stared at her, trying to read the spaces between her words. "So it was bait." She tilted her head slightly. "No, not bait. A signal." I almost laughed. "A signal for what?" "To come find you signing documents in a house that looks like it belongs to someone in witness protection? With passports, Sienna?" She didn't answer. I stepped further into the room. "What was that? Elise? Fake names? Are you running? Are you leaving the country?" She finally looked me in the eye. "It's bigger than that." Those 4 words hit like a freight train. Not because of what she said, but how she said it. She didn't say it like a scared woman. She said it like someone who'd rehearsed it. Like someone who knew I had reached the edge and she was about to push me further off the cliff. She pulled out a chair for herself and sat down. I didn't. I stayed standing, fists clenched, heart racing, waiting for the moment the floor would open again. And it did. "I never meant for you to find out the way you did," she started, voice low. "This whole thing, Eli, the affair, the Birchfield, it wasn't just about infidelity. It was about leverage." "Leverage?" I repeated the word out loud like it was foreign. "Leverage for what? What were you trying to get out of this?" Her fingers laced together tightly. "I didn't want to hurt you. I just needed a way out. Quietly, without blowing everything up. I was trying to extract myself, carefully, from more than just our marriage." I stepped back. "Extract yourself? From what, Sienna?" She looked up then, finally, and what I saw in her eyes wasn't sadness. It was something colder, strategic. "You know, my old job was in marketing. But before that, I worked in acquisitions for a firm that managed private data contracts. Government adjacent. Not exactly black ops, but not public either. I left it behind years ago, or at least I thought I had. But last year something came back. Someone came back. Eli wasn't random. He didn't just show up at your office. He was sent." I felt my pulse in my ears. "You're telling me this wasn't even real?" She stood up slowly. "It started real. The marriage. But once they found me again, once they started pressing, I needed a way to disappear. And you were my weakness. The one thing that made me reachable. So I had to make you let me go." My knees almost gave out. This wasn't cheating anymore. This was something else entirely. My wife had staged her own downfall to push me into releasing her. She had created the illusion of betrayal so convincing that I wouldn't just let her go. I'd want her gone. She paced now, her energy shifting. "The documents you saw today? They weren't passports. They were clearance reassignments. And Eli? He's not who you think he is." I staggered backward, hitting the doorframe. My voice cracked. "Are you telling me the affair wasn't real?" "Oh, it happened," she said without blinking. "But not because I loved him. Because he was the easiest tool in the box." Couldn't breathe. My heart wasn't just broken anymore. It was scrambled. Everything I thought I knew had collapsed twice over. First I lost my wife to a man I thought I trusted. Now I was losing my entire grip on what was real. "And the person who texted me?" I asked. "The one who told me everything? Who was that?" She looked away for the first time. "That wasn't part of the plan." My breath caught. "So someone else knows." She nodded. "Someone who's been watching both of us. Probably longer than we realize." I didn't ask what that meant, because I wasn't ready. Not for the truth. Not for what was coming next. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a story about betrayal anymore. It was a story about being used. And I had no idea how far it went. I didn't say anything right away. I just stood there in that strange little house, surrounded by half-truths and discarded lives, and watched the woman I once swore forever to tell me she'd been playing a role. Not just for me, but for someone else, for something else, for years. And you know the weirdest part? I wasn't angry anymore. Not because it didn't hurt. It did badly. I mean, how do you process finding out your wife orchestrated your heartbreak on purpose, just to save you from being pulled into something darker? How do you wrap your head around the idea that your entire spiral was designed? But once the shock wore off, once I stopped looking at her like a stranger, I realized I wasn't trapped anymore. I'd been set free. In the worst, most brutal way, but free nonetheless. I didn't ask her any more questions. I didn't demand names or explanations. I just nodded, turned around, and walked out that door. She didn't stop me. She didn't follow. She knew she didn't need to. She had finished her story, and I had finally started mine. The drive home was different. I rolled the windows down. I let the air hit my face. I let silence be enough. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like a passenger in my own life. Back at the house, I took the box she left me. Her final gesture, her curated heartbreak, and I burned it in the fire pit behind the garage. Every photo, every letter, every read when you're ready moment. I didn't need them. I didn't want a museum of my pain. I wanted a blank page. A few weeks passed. I got a haircut. I changed my number. I started walking in the mornings again, even when it rained. I reconnected with an old college friend named Marcy, someone I hadn't talked to in years. Not romantically, not yet. Just a voice who remembered me before all this. And I finally started therapy. Turns out, talking about things out loud to someone without an agenda? Pretty healing. I never heard from Sienna again. No calls. No follow-ups. No dramatics. Just silence. And weirdly, I respected that. Because for all the chaos she unleashed, she did what I couldn't. She ended it. I tell this story now not because I want pity. Not because I want to shame her. But because I think sometimes the only way we move forward is by tearing down the fantasy we've built around the life we think we deserve. I thought I deserved a perfect marriage. But what I actually needed was myself. And I've finally met him again. He's kind of awkward. A little too soft. Still folds his socks in pairs and talks to his cat like she understands full sentences. But he's honest. And that's a start. Thanks for watching Reddit Confessions. If this story connected with you in any way, leave a comment below and tell us. Have you ever discovered a hidden truth that completely changed the way you saw someone or yourself? And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe. There's always another story waiting to be told. Until next time.